Yo, what's up guys? It's a new sensation, Big Annotation here, and today we're back with another deck profile. It's been a little while, I know. I've been wanting to get back on the content on the dedicated YouTube videos and not just streaming stuff for a little while now. And now with the recent ban lists, with the banning of mainly SS4 Sin and Gamma being very nice for the format, and then the more recent lists are just kind of banning the weird super combo stuff that Green had access to with the Vegeta and the Gogeta. The format feels very nice to play right now. I'm super motivated to play Dragon Ball. There's like so many decks that I feel like can do well at the moment, and I'm super excited to just give all of them a try. So all of that motivation is hopefully going to be pumped into some more YouTube content, which I'm excited for because we're almost at 1K subscribers. So that would also be a really cool goal to reach, obviously. And I have got something special planned for when we do hit that goal. It might take me a little bit of time to put together, but it's going to be a bit of fun as per usual. But yeah, today I'm going to be profiling the Angel Halo deck, which I managed to go undefeated with in the last webcam locals. And if you guys want to check out the deck in action, then I've got a video of all of the gameplay, all just pieced together, and I'll have a link to it in the description, so you guys can check that out if you really want to see the deck play out. But yeah, the deck's sick. I've really enjoyed it for a really long time. I don't think I've even ever made a profile on the deck, which surprises me a bit. But it was the main deck that I was playing throughout a lot of Zenkai block. And I was genuinely considering taking it to EU finals. It was between this deck and Gamma. Not because this deck is like good enough to be winning EU finals or anything like that, but mostly because I was deciding whether I did well or I had fun. And this was my for fun choice. And I felt like it could have definitely taken some games off of some Sin and SS4 players at the time. Although maybe that was a little bit naive of me to think. I'm not sure. Luckily we ended up not bringing this and doing quite well in the end, but yeah, this deck is an amazing deck. I love this deck. I definitely haven't given it the time of day that it deserves for how fun it is, and so I'm happy to bring a profile of it now. And like I say, at the moment I feel like there's a lot of decks that can do well at the moment. I feel like this is definitely a deck you can top with. Winning an event with this deck is maybe a bit more challenging. I wouldn't expect this deck to win any events in the near future, but I feel like the format is very open right now, and I feel like you can definitely squeeze some tops with this deck. But it's also just fun to play, so we'll run through it. Obviously we've got the third place leader, which I ended up choosing to get from EU finals so that I could flex with the deck. I didn't want no SS4 leader, fuck that shit. Bardock, I'm gonna go to sleep. This deck is fun, so we went for this leader instead, so we got to flex with it. But the leader, I guess it's relatively unknown what this deck does, so I'll go through some of the cards. The leader has a permanent. You can't include black battle cards in the deck. You can include black extra cards, which is actually slightly relevant. It has an activate main on the front side. You discard 3 Another World Budokais from your hand to draw 3. So on paper this doesn't inherently look very good because you're not plussing, you're just kind of cycling. But it turns into pluses later once you get into the actual Angel Halo side of things. The Awaken is when your life is 4 or less, or you have 3 Angel Halos in your drop area, you untap 1, draw 1, go down to 6 life. On the backside is where shit gets real cool. On swing, you discard a card to draw a card. Again, another on paper, just like net even, but you want your Another World Budokais in the drop area, and you can cycle your Angel Halos a lot. So this is a plus in a way. It's just you have to look at some of the net evens as pluses in this deck when they're not really, but they kind of are at the same time. It's very weird. He's got an activate main which isn't once per turn. It has no restriction on it. You send 2 Another World Budokais from your drop area to your warp, and you add an Angel Halo from your drop area back to your hand. So that's where the front side activate main gets a little bit more utility, because if you think about it, every 3 Another World Budokais you discard is 1.5 Angel Halos that you can then add back later on. And on your Awaken turn, if you've used your frontside leader activate main a couple times, you'll suddenly be able to just add back all your Angel Halos and then start discarding them for things like your backside leader effect to get a free draw, and then add back the Angel Halo again, or some of your battle card effects, which we get into later in the deck. He's also got an activate battle, which is you can combo with up to 2 Another World Budokais from your warp with their skills negated, and they have to be 5k combos. And that's once per turn, and they also get minus 3k combo power each which means that in total, if you combo with 2 guys, it's going to be a total of 4k combo power, which isn't hugely relevant, but if you start to think about it, it means that in combination with the leader's on attack auto makes the leader a draw 1 leader, because you combo with 2 another Ward Budokais on like one of your battle card swings or something like that, or just on your opponent's turn. You put them into the drop, and then you warp them, add back an Angel Halo, and then you swing, discard the Angel Halo, and draw 1. So overall, that whole cycle of those 2 effects will get you a draw 1. But this is better than a draw 1 leader because you have more utility. You can choose to Z-charge one of the 2 cards that you combo with, so you can start racking up very nice Z energy for your Z battle cards. And you can also rack up Z energy for things like the Goku Black from the Anniversary box. And not only that, but you can also use this activate battle during your opponent's turn, which makes it again better than a draw 1 leader, because you're getting effectively an extra 5k defensively on each of your opponent's turns, which is great. Also, the fact that it's 4k combo power is actually slightly relevant, because when we get to the Angel Halos, of which we run 3 copies of, the Angel Halo is just a simple activate battle, limit 1, you choose up to one of your leader cards or battle cards and give it plus 1k combo power, or plus 1k power for the battle. So it's effectively a 1k combo, which when used in tangent with the leader activate battle, that makes it a 5k combo, because you have the 4k from the leader and the 1k from the Angel Halo. Not hugely relevant, you don't really combo with the Angel Halo ever, you more just use it as discard fodder for a lot of your effects. But it's just another showcase of why this leader is, with those 2 effects, overall better than a draw 1 leader. Which isn't a huge bar to kind of overcome, but it's just something that I want to point out. People might look at the swing, discard 1, draw 1 and start to assume this leader's absolutely terrible, which it isn't. So that's the leader, and then we have the 3 Angel Halos, which we're obviously recycling as much as we can. We only need 3 copies for any of our effects, and the main effect being the Alternative Awaken on the front side, because we only need 3 Angel Halos in drop rather than 4. And you do not want to be drawing your Angel Halos early on, because you have a card to dump them straight from deck or life to drop. So you'd rather not draw them, because it's basically then you just have to use it as a limit 1 combo, so that you can then get it in drop to awaken. It's just quite, yeah, it's not good to draw these early on. And the other important thing to note about this card is that if you have a Z battle card in play when you use the activate battle, it's a 5k combo rather than a 1k combo, which again doesn't come up very often. You only really combo this card if you're going on a kill swing or if you're defending for a kill swing, but you know, sometimes it's relevant. It's nice to know. And then speaking of the card that is going to tutor our Angel Halos from deck to drop, we have 4 of the North Kai. So he's a 1-drop barrier. He has an activate main, which is once per turn, which is for free, where you can just put an Angel Halo from your deck to your drop. So you can play him and then activate main, put an Angel Halo from deck to drop. Great. Now what if they're stuck in your life? Well, he's got a second activate main, which isn't once per turn, which is you pay an energy and then you either put another Angel Halo from your deck to your drop. So on your turn 1, you can play this guy for 1. You can activate main, put an Angel Halo from deck to drop, and then turn 2, you can activate main, put an Angel Halo from deck to drop, and then activate main, pay 1 to put an Angel Halo from deck to drop. And keep track of how many times I say Angel Halo throughout this video and the gameplay video. There'll be a lot of those. His other effect, so you can pay 1 to put the Angel Halo from deck to drop, or you can pay 1 to look at your life and place 1 Angel Halo from your life into your drop. Now, there's a slightly weird wording on this effect, which is kind of important to note, which is that if you choose an Angel Halo from your life and put it to the drop, so first of all, I should clarify, when you put the Angel Halo from life to drop, you also replace it with the top card of your deck, and then you shuffle your life. If you choose to put an Angel Halo from your life to your drop, you obviously do that. If there's no Angel Halo in your life, it doesn't require you to shuffle, because it only requires you to shuffle your life if you put the Angel Halo from life to drop, because then you replace it with the top card of your deck and then you shuffle. It's, as far as I recall, that's how it works, because I remember there being a whole load of weird judge rulings about it when the set came out, and I think that's what it was clarified as. So yeah, as far as I know, that's how it works. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, basically. That's generally how I've played it, although more recent times I've become more unsure of myself, and so I've just kind of not done that, and not use the effect to look at my life unless I know there's an Angel Halo there. Most of the time that's going to be the case anyways, is that you just dump the halos from your deck to drop if you know they're in deck, or dump them from life to drop. But anyways, moving on, we have 4 bubbles. So this card is great as well if you don't see your Northkai early on. First of all, it's a limit 1 top 5 searcher, so you discard it to search top 5. Unfortunately, it can only grab another world Budokais that cost 3 or less, which means that there are 2 targets that you miss out on, which is really, really frustrating. There is a 1-drop for this archetype which searches top 5, and I believe it grabs any another world Budokai that's 5 or less, which then would only miss out on the 6-drop. But I feel like this is better because it's free, and the 1-drop obviously costs 1 to search top 5. And this also instantly puts another world Budokai into your drop area when you use the discard top 5 effect, which can be really nice for fixing some of your numbers past the early game when you want to be like warping all of the battle cards from your drop area, or you just need 1 more Angel Halo in your hand. This can be really nice to start fixing those numbers so that you can get there, whilst not actually losing out on any card advantage, because you then hopefully replace it from the top 5 search. And then on top of that, it's got a nice activate main, which is you pay a blue energy, you send it from your drop area to your warp, and then you put an Angel Halo from your deck to your drop. Not going to be hugely relevant. I don't think I've really ever used that effect, but it's really nice if you start to just like whiff off the Northkais, like you don't see Northkai early on, you discard this top 5, don't see a Northkai again, then you can still start dumping your Angel Halos if you see any number of these bubbles. So that's really helpful. But it's mainly there to try and find the Northkai turn 1, because it will search top 5 for it. Or it can also just later on help you search top 5 for any bits that you might need, whilst also filling up your drop with more Another World Budokais. And then we have 4 copies of the Majoran. This card is amazing. I love this card. It's kind of your way of making up for the fact that you're going to be discarding a lot of your archetype on the first 2 turns of the game. With your frontside leader skill, because a lot of the time you're awakening turn 2 by playing the Northkai turn 1 and doing the whole thing that I mentioned earlier, because you get the 3 halos in drop by playing the Northkai turn 1. So that means you can awaken turn 2, which means you only get 2 casts of the leader frontside, which is generally enough. A lot of the time you don't get 2 casts, you'll only get 1 cast of the frontside activate main, but ideally your opening hand is Northkai plus 3 Another World Budokais plus a card to charge, because then you can play Northkai for 1 and then discard 3 other Another World Budokais to draw 3 off the leader skill. And this card makes up for the fact that you're then going to be discarding so many of your archetype cards, because you can pick them up later with this card. So this card is a 2 mana 5k, but if you have 2 or more Angel Halos in drop, it's a 1-drop. When it's played, you draw a card, and you also put an Another World Budokai from your warp back to your drop, which is great because it obviously means that you're halfway to getting another Angel Halo into your hand. So it's effectively a plus 1.5 if you want to think about it like that. And then it's got an activate main where you can warp it from your battle area and discard an Angel Halo from your hand to add any Another World Budokai from your warp to your hand that costs between 3 and 7. So if you think about it, it's a bit like the SS4 Son Goku Beyond All Limits from Black, except that it costs 1, but it also draws you a card and gets your Angel Halo cycles started a bit easier as well. I guess the main thing to keep in mind with this deck is that ideally going into every turn and for most of your effects, you're going to want to have 2 Angel Halos in drop and 1 in your hand. There's only 1 card that I can think of in the deck that doesn't require that sort of setup, but that's kind of, if you're starting to play the deck, that's the ideal setup that you want to aim for. It's sort of like the Expert Deck 21 where you want to aim for a super combo in your energy and a super combo in drop going into each turn. But with this deck, you want 2 Angel Halos in drop and 1 in hand. Because this card, like I said, you want 2 or more Angel Halos in drop to make it a 1-drop, and then you want 1 in hand so that you can then instantly just cast the Recycle effect. But yeah, it's a nice 1-drop cantrip with the added bonus of being able to put another guy from warp back to drop to help fuel your Angel Halos, whilst also being able to then just recycle your big boss monsters once it gets to the later game and the mid game. This deck does have a Floodgate. It's not very good, but it's there. And you kind of just want to have a lot of Another World Budokais so that you can fuel your leader front side as consistently as possible. So this guy is the Floodgate. A lot of the time you do just use him for a 1-mana negate and then play himself. But against certain matchups it's really nice to have the Floodgate go off. And it doesn't cost much because this deck draws a lot because it can recycle these Angel Halos for your effect so much. So it's a 3-drop 15k, but if you have 2 or more Angel Halos in your drop area, it becomes a 1-drop, which is again why you want 2 Angel Halos in drop ideally, and then 1 in hand for the auto. Counterattack, negate the attack and play this card, and then the auto is you can, when it comes into play, you can discard an Angel Halo, and then if your opponent wants to attack for the rest of the turn with a 5 cost or less battle card, they have to bottom deck a card. So it's like a really, really watered down Defending Friends, but it's also a 15k, and it doesn't require the Z energy, instead it just requires Angel Halos, which is nigh in abundance. But yeah, against certain matchups it's really nice, like against Majin Vegeta, a lot of their early swings are going to be 4 cost or 3 cost. So being able to floodgate them for 5 costs or less is actually quite relevant. But a lot of the time this is just a 1-drop negate. This paired with Defending Friends can be very nice against a lot of decks as well. And especially if you can get a negate on their leader swing to prevent any damage going through from that. But most of the time it's just a 1-drop negate and then a 15k you can play later on. Or it's discard fodder because it's another World Budokai. And then the last of the search targets off the bubbles that we play are 2 of the Olabu. He is very weird. He's not really relevant. He's very much a discard card. Discard it for the leader skill, but like sometimes he comes up and you use him to kill because he's just a 1-mana play from Warp, and then swing through for the kill if you really run out of resources. Or he's like quite nice to trigger cards like Poutine or the Trunks 3-drop for Trunks Cheetah, that sort of thing. It's very nice. But basically what he does is he's got an activate main, you discard an Angel Halo, you pay an energy, and you play him from your Warp. So that's why he's really nice to discard early off the leader skill, because you can then get him into Warp when you Warp as a cost for your Angel Halos to add back. And then he's just a guy that you can play from Warp if you need to. A lot of the time you don't need to. And then when he comes into play, you can discard an Another World Budokai battle card, and then draw a card and choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and return it to its owner's hand. So the main way that this guy gets used when you're using that auto is just to be bouncing back Z battle cards mostly. The fact that you get to discard an Another World Budokai to draw a card is really nice, because it fuels your drop area halfway to an Angel Halo, whilst again not losing your card advantage and developing a 15k and potentially bouncing a card back to hand. But returning a card to hand is a lot of the time not very good removal, and doing all of that for a 15k is eventually, like, it's just not really worth it a lot of the time. So I feel like this card it's nice in the mid game if you just have spare energy, and especially if you're against a deck that isn't going to kill you next turn or apply all that much pressure. But a lot of the time it's just kind of you play him when you're looking to end the game and you need that one extra swing. Then into the main guys, I guess, for the deck, the main big cards. We have 4 of the Goku Pycon Dead Heat. This is probably the best card in the deck. It really puts in the work, and if this guy ever sticks around for multiple turns, you probably won that game. Like, there's very few situations where this card stays on the board for more than a turn. And if they've let you keep this card for longer than a turn, then it's really dumb. This card is really what snowballs your advantage. So he's a 15k dual attack deflect, but he's got an activate main for 2 energy, which is limit 1. If you have 3 or more energy and you discard 2 mono blue extra cards, you play him from your hand and he gets barrier for the turn. So he's going to be a 15k dual attack deflect barrier. So all the protection you could ask for. This guy basically only dies to Wolfang Fist on the turn that he's played. Now the 2 extra cards that you discard, those are going to be Angel Halos. You can discard like Beans and Realms and D-Magics, and there are situations where that will come up if you haven't been able to get as many of your frontside leader skills off to recycle back enough Halos for the turn. But most of the time it's just 2 Angel Halos and it doesn't feel like that big of a cost. And then when he swings, you can choose up to 1 battle card, mono blue battle card with 5k combo power in your drop area, and then combo with it with its skills negated for the turn, and then choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and put it to the bottom of the deck. Now that auto is again not once per turn, so because he's dual attack, that's going to trigger twice. So this guy is going to remove 2 non-barrier threats on the board and swing twice for 20k whilst charging you Z energy, which is really juicy. And then at the end of every turn that he's on the board, which is almost guaranteed for the turn that he's played, because again, he's going to be Deflect Barrier, you get to draw a card and switch up to one of your energy to active mode. Something to note for this deck is you cannot side Cunning cards, you cannot side Krillin the Cunning, and you really hope that people don't side it against you because it really hurts this deck. Warping 5 from your drop area is going to mess with your Angel Halo counts and your Another World Budokai counts in the drop. So it's going to just kind of prevent you from recycling back Halos consistently enough. And you also have this card, which is a lot of the time you tap out on turns where you play this card because you just get the untap one, draw one at the end of the turn anyways. And then the next card, which I will show as well, is the 3 Bionic Blitz, or Another World Blitz, sorry. Which again is going to untap you an energy at the end of the turn. Obviously those are both optional skills, and if you get Cunning played against you, you just choose not to untap the energy a lot of the time. But Cunning hurts. But like I say, this card sticking around for multiple turns is crazy because it provides you 2 20k swings per turn, 2 options of removal, and then an untap one, draw one, which is crazy value. So for the turn that he's played, he is providing so much, and then again, if he sticks around, you just win the game. A lot of the time, like, this is the card that you want to play from turn 3 onwards, unless you have like very specific situations where you need a massive board clear, or like they've floodgated you or that kind of thing. So a lot of the time this is the card that you keep playing over and over, and you just recycle it back with Majorans as well. It's just a crazy card. It's really, really good. And then this 6-drop is the Another World Blitz. Deflect, Triple Strike, Barrier Blocker. This is the guy that gets used in all the blue ramp decks. I feel like this guy has kind of fallen out of favor very recently just because barrier removal is a lot more common in the game. And especially with green being so huge in the format with Green Gohan at the moment, this card is really not that great. I'd still say 3 is worth playing because, again, it's Another World Budokai. You discard it off your leader skill, you get some value by grabbing back Halos. And there are definitely times where this card comes up, like if you get floodgated and you just don't really have anything that you want to do on your turn, because this deck, it's a blue deck, so it doesn't really have that great answers to floodgates. You just play this guy and you draw a card, you clear some battle cards off the board, and then at the end of the turn you untap an energy. So he's got an activate main where you pay 4 blue energy. If there are no battle cards in your drop area, you play him from your hand. So obviously that has great synergy with the deck because this is the deck that it was made for. But you can warp all of your Another World Budokais pretty much on command. So you can make sure that you don't have any of those battle cards in drop. There are a few battle cards in this deck that are not Another World Budokais. So some of those are a little bit more matchup dependent, so you can charge those in the matchups you don't need them or side them out. But most of the ones that are not matchup dependent, that are just quite generic good blue cards, are 5k combo power. So the idea is if they get stuck in your drop area, if they get removed from your opponent's skills, you play this guy down, you can then combo them into your Z energy and just have them sit in your Z energy until you need to use them from the Z energy, and then that's going to enable you to play this card. And then on any combats where you're comboing non-Another World Budokai cards, you want to be ideally Z charging the non-Another World Budokai cards, because the Another World Budokai cards are better in your drop area, and they will also not restrict you from playing this card if you need to. Again, this card is very situational nowadays, but it's still quite nice to have. And then for the super combo, we are running 4 of the Grand Kai. He's just an Another World Budokai, so he's searchable off of bubbles, which is nice. He's also, once you use him and he's in your drop area, you're going to be able to use it to cycle back more Angel Halos, which is a great addition. And also there are some situations where you have 2 Another World Budokais in hand in the early game, and you have a copy of this as well. And you just discard 3 to draw 3 off the leader skill, because there are definitely times where discarding 1 super combo off the leader skill so that you can then discard the other 2 cards and then draw 3 is just worth it, because setting up the drop area and being able to cycle that far into the deck for this deck is really, really important. Also important to note, I am playing 50 cards as per usual. Even though you're cycling 3 cards and potentially 6 cards in your first 2 turns, and this deck draws a ridiculous amount going further into the game, 50 cards is still fine. You'll get close to decking out in some games, but I don't believe that this deck should ever really deck out like with most decks. I think you should be fine. So going into more generic blue stuff, SCR of choice, Beast Gohan. Cards just snapped, and I feel like this deck, it's not really a control blue deck, it's a bit more mid-range. It definitely has some good aggression with the dual attack Goku Pikkon. It swarms with a lot of 15Ks and it can just beat down from there. The Z Battle card, which we'll get into a bit later, also provides some really nice aggression. So this deck is built to be very much a mid-rangey blue deck rather than a control one. It's not really stalling to get to anything. A lot of the time you're killing around turn 5 or 6 at the latest. So this card is just great, and you also have a couple of inbuilt barrier triple strikers, which are nice to restand. You could also, in theory, restand Goku Pikkon for another 20k swing and another chance to remove something if you needed to. But most of the time you're just restanding Beast Gohan along with like a triple striker or your leader or an energy if you want to play more stuff. 2 Goku Black. Card's really nice in the deck. There are times where I consider going to 3 copies of this card, because again, off your leader activate battle, you're comboing 2 cards from your warp on each of your turns and each of your opponent's turns. So you're getting so much Z energy very quickly on top of any natural comboing that you might do. So this card is live a lot of the time. And again, he's a 5k, so if you get stuck in your drop area, you can just combo him off of the Dead Heat. So you can enable another World Blitz there. 2 Gohan rares as well. There are times where I consider going down to 1 Gohan rare and 3 of this, but 2 Gohan rares is nice as well. It's very good for the early game where you just need to remove an early threat, especially if you haven't got to the 3Z energy mark yet. And it's very nice in the late game if it starts to get to that, if you start to kind of peter out of aggression and peter out of resources, and the game starts to slow down and go into the opponent's favor if they're playing a slower deck. You can oftentimes just like drop this on your opponent's turn after using a Sparking D magic and really punish them. Or just like doing that generally, even in games where it's going in your favor, is fine as well. Like the fact that this card exists is just a whole punishing method against your opponents. Like they can never swing into you when you have 3 energy open. And then a new addition to the deck is the 2 8-drop Oob. This card is crazy for blue, I feel like. This is the main reason that I want to play. Like this is the only card that tempts me to play blue at the moment over black decks. This card is just really nice. It gets reduced by 3 costs for every Z energy your opponent has. He's got 2 specified, so he'll become a 2 cost once your opponent has 2 Z energy. So the idea is you play him as a 2-drop. Deflect Double Strike. When he's played, the auto is limit 1 for when he's played, which is you draw a card and you choose up to 3 of your opponent's battle cards on board or in drop and put them to their Z energy. And then he's got an auto, which is once per turn, which is if you and your opponent have a combined total of 7 Z energy or more, the first time your opponent activates a counter skill each turn, note that's counter skill, not counter attack or counter play specifically, so it can be either one, or even counter in some cases. They add a card from their hand to their Z energy. So it's just some nice inbuilt kind of hand control, just more resources for blue to kind of leech upon. And it's just a big 30k double striker for 2 energy. This card being restood by the Gohan SCR is juicy, because total of that is going to be 4 energy played for 2 very big threats. And then if they're countering, they're losing cards from hand. But again, you're building up a lot of Z energy in this deck throughout a lot of the game, so the second auto on this card is going to be alive a lot of the time, especially if you're Z charging a lot of your opponent's cards. So just some nice board removal and sometimes some nice drop area manipulation if you're playing against a deck that's relevant against. I am running 1 Turning the Tide. I go really back and forth on this card. I feel like this is a card that I might just take out. It feels like a necessary card to have because this deck's kill turns are like turn 5 to 7. So this card can come down, but it just doesn't feel like there are ever games where I want it to come down. It feels like the games where I could play it, I'm already ahead by that point. And playing this would then just kind of equalize my opponent with myself, and then if they top deck better than I do, then they'll win it in the later game. The theory behind this card is it's really nice because you can play it and then you can add back a bunch of halos from your drop as like 1k defense if you need to, or just, you know, to have some semblance of a hand advantage. But yeah, it doesn't feel great, to be honest. There are times where I consider taking it out, especially for the fun factor. Dropping this card just doesn't feel rewarding or fun, and it just feels like a case of, did they side deck in Jiren? Did they not? Okay, sure. As well, it's a 1 cost 10k, and it's the only, I believe it's the only 1 cost 10k in the whole deck. But that makes it especially annoying because in matchups where it's not going to be so useful, it's hard to combo with, and if it ends up in your drop area for any reason, you cannot get rid of it, which means that you're not able to play your 6-drop throughout the game. So a lot of the time I just find myself charging it. It's definitely a card you can take out, especially if you want to have a bit more fun with the deck. If you're looking to win with the deck, I guess keep a copy in, because in those slower matchups, if you play against like Soul Striker or any slow blue deck especially, this card is going to be real nice. And then going into the other Android 17, which is the Defending Friends. I mentioned earlier, this is really nice to pair with Sata, because having them bottom deck 2 cards per 5 cost or less battle card that swings, plus having just 2 1-drop negates that spawn battle cards in is really nice. Again, you build a lot of Z energy. It's the same logic as Goku Black, like you might as well play it, because you build so much Z energy in the deck. And then going into kind of generic blue extra card stuff, we have 3D Magic and 2 Bean. I'd recommend side decking a 3rd Bean if you're playing against yellow. I don't feel like you need 4 copies of either of these cards, to be honest, because you have like Goku Blacks and Gohan Rares and all of the mid-combat stuff that blue has nowadays to just kind of not take damage when they should. And then to pair with that, we also have 2 Realms. And then the last card in the deck is 1 Max Power Kamehameha. This is kind of a weird card in the deck. There are some games where it really overperforms and some games where it feels completely useless and you can't charge it because it's a black card. But the idea behind this card is if you have cards stuck in your drop area that are not Another World Budokais, again, you can use this as a counter attack and then warp the 4 non-Another World Budokais from your drop area if you're not seeing enough of the dual attacker, the Dead Heat, to clear them out. And then you can start going into your 6-drops again. But as the format develops and 6-drop and like barrier threats just become less and less relevant, this card again becomes less and less relevant because you just don't need to play the 6-drop in this deck a lot of the time. But it's a nice card just because of the fact that you can keep adding it back, and warping like spare extra cards that are non-Angel Halo extra cards is really nice. As well as the option to then warp the non-Another World Budokai battle cards is great. But a lot of the time this card is kind of meh. A lot of the time you'd rather just spend your energy on a Goku Black to remove one of their pieces, as well as developing your own board and cycling you a card. But it's a nice include as a one-off. It's not the worst thing in the world. And like I say, this deck draws a lot, so one-offs in this deck, you will see them a lot. Going into the Z deck, I guess before I go into the Z deck, there is one card I wanted to mention, which is not a card I'm currently running, but it's a card that I'd recommend at least sideboarding, and that is this Trunks from one of the recent champ packs or something. It's really nice in this deck because you have the 8-drop Oob, which is a great pair with it. It's an 8-drop and it's a 30k, so it meets both the conditions. In theory, you can drop it alongside Turning the Tide because it's a 30k, but that's never going to happen. You can drop it alongside the Gohan Rare because it's an 8-drop, and you can also drop it alongside the 6-drop because it's a 30k. So there's a lot of targets for this card to be dropped alongside, which is great. And there are sticky targets because if you're playing against another blue deck or another, like a red deck, that's not going to have very much barrier removal, you can drop the 6-drop quite safely and then next turn drop this as barrier or indestructible removal. So it's very nice. And it's also just a 1-mana 20k swing that removes stuff on swing. 20k crit as well. So again, it feeds into that kind of mid-range resource pile-up, overwhelm your opponent with resources kind of playstyle that this deck leans towards. It's definitely a nice card to consider at least side decking. I wouldn't necessarily main deck it just because I feel like there's other good generic non-Another World Budokai blue battle cards which I've included in the deck which I'd rather have over this card. But against decks where you need barrier removal, this card is really nice. And then going into the Z deck, we have 4 copies of the SS Goku Awakened Onslaught. This is honestly one of my favorite Z battle cards for blue. And when I was playing Gamma in finals, this card came in really clutch for me because I had a whole sequence about how I could get rid of the SS4 Unison on turn 2 or turn 3, no matter who went first, based around this card. And yeah, this card definitely overperformed for me there. And in this deck specifically, obviously it's designed for this deck, so it's even better. But what this guy does, he's a 1 mana 3 Z energy 15k. So initially you might think that's quite expensive on the Z energy, but this deck obviously generates a load of Z energy, and the fact that it's a 1 mana 15k is great as well. He's got an auto which comes up occasionally, but not all that much, where you, at the end of the turn, you can put a Z energy to your drop and remove this card from the game and choose one of your opponent's battle cards that cost 5 or less and bottom deck it. A lot of the time you don't need that removal because you have your dead heats around the time that you start playing this card, so you can swing twice and remove 2 battle cards there. And you can also, yeah, there's enough removal in the deck most of the time. But sometimes it comes up, and it's relevant when it does. The main reason you play this card is he's got an activate main once per turn, where if your leader's mono blue and you discard an extra card from your hand, you draw a card and give him crit for the turn. So you can start cycling your Angel Halos back to your hand, and then using this guy as a draw power engine to turn your Angel Halos into actual cards, whilst giving him crit. So he's a 1 mana 15k crit every turn, as well as being able to turn your Angel Halos into actual cards, which is really, really nice. And I definitely feel like 4 of this is still correct, even though there's so many good Z battle cards for blue at the moment. You just play this card so often, it's really, really nice. And then for the other blue Z battle cards, we just kind of run one of each of the generic good ones. So 1 Beerus, 1 Cell, 1 Vegito. Vegito is again a 30k, which can be used alongside the Trunks I just mentioned, but most of the time you don't go into Vegito. Again, barrier removal is too big of a threat at the moment. So Vegito, it feels like a lot of the time it's either a win more card or just a card you play where you've been floodgated for the turn and you have nothing better to do. But it's still relevant, it's still worth playing in my eyes. But this is definitely the Z deck that I'd stick with. I feel like it's correct. A lot of the time you don't use your Z deck other than these 4, but these cards are obviously just nice to have for situations where you need extra barrier removal or a massive board wipe for smaller guys, or if you've been floodgated and you play this guy. But yeah, most of the time it's just the 1-drops. But that is the whole deck profile for the Angel Halo deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said before, if you guys want to see the deck in action, definitely check out the most recent gameplay of me playing this in the Scrub Games webcam locals. It's a super fun deck. I highly recommend it if you like mid-range blue stuff that takes a lot more sequencing than just your average Soul Striker or Crimson. This is definitely a deck to play. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with cycling the Angel Halos and figuring out how many Halos you can add back in a turn based on how many battle cards you can get in the drop in a turn, and then using that to figure out what effects you can use for that turn. It's very, very cool, very rewarding to play as well. It's just a super fun deck. I highly recommend it. And like I say, I think it can probably do stuff this format if you can play it right and you can build a sideboard for it that's definitely better than mine, because my sideboard was all over the place. But that's going to be it from me for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully we'll be back with some more deck profiles soon. Hopefully we reach 1k subs soon, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.